Yes, hello everybody. Thank you very much for coming out on this horrible night. My name is Myfanwy Tristram, and I am going to talk about how comics can help you, yes you, save the world. So I draw comics in my spare time, that's some of mine. Drawing is a very solitary pursuit, and I have a day job, so comics is my hobby, something that I do in my spare time. And to carve out a bit of time, what I tend to do is get up very early in the morning before everybody else is awake. And it's dark and the house is quiet, and you can imagine me sitting there at my desk, and to keep me company I usually put the radio on. And up until about 2016 that was really nice and cosy and lovely. And then if you cast your mind back to 2016, you'll remember that the news started taking a certain turn. And it wasn't quite so much fun anymore. If you remember 2016, the news that was coming through, first of all there was the refugee crisis, there was the election of Donald Trump, there was the Brexit referendum, and this is where I say, doesn't matter what side you were on or how you voted in the Brexit referendum, nobody can deny that it's actually been really divisive. Whatever you believe, things have got complicated on the political arena. And I have to say that as I sat there drawing my lovely little comics, my little slice of life about how amusing this trivial little thing happened to me on the school run, I started thinking, oh God, this is a bit trivial actually, with all these big things happening on the world stage. Around that time, I went for a run. Which is always a bad idea actually, because that's when you start getting silly thoughts in your head. And when I came back, I made this Facebook post. So I'd had this idea. It says, I went for a run and I came back with what I think is a good idea. Based on recent political events and on the responses to them that I've seen from my loved ones here on Facebook, I want to do something practical. And my idea was that I would gather together a few of my comic friends. So, if you make comics, then you tend to make other friends who make comics as well. And I probably had a handful, 4 or 5 people I knew who made comics. And I thought, well, what if each of us depicted a political action that anyone can do? If you're feeling unhappy with the current political climate, what can you do? Let's draw some illustrations, draw some comics. Maybe 4 or 5 people will get involved, we'll put a book out, Kickstarter it. Probably won't make a big difference to the world, but at least we'll be doing something. But of course, Facebook, working the way that it does work, I tagged a few of my friends and then they tagged a few of their friends, and before we knew where we were, we had 114 artists from 16 different countries all getting involved. So each of them were drawing one idea, one illustration or one strip of something that you can do, concrete things you can do if you want to make change. And we divided them up, so we've put them all on a website, and if you go to that website you can see there are sort of things you can do if you want to help disabled people, for example. Things you can do if you've got no money at all but you still want to do something. Things you can do if you're just a kid, if you want to help the homeless, if you want to do something for the environment, and so on and so forth. And in total, the idea is that they make up this toolkit for activism. There's more than 100 ideas, and they can inspire you when you're feeling powerless. And what I'm going to do at this point is I'm just going to bombard you with a few of the ideas. And I always think it's nice, actually, as we go through, perhaps you could pick one and think to yourself, yeah, I'm going to do that, and I'll do it tomorrow. So we started off with the small actions, the obvious ones, the ones that you would probably think of. If I said to you, if you want to make change politically, what would you do? So here's a really obvious one. Sign a petition, something that lots of us do. This is illustrated by the fantastic Nicholas Sputnik Miller. Now, we're very lucky in this country. If you get 100,000 signatures, then your petition will be debated in Parliament. That's not something that happens everywhere, so it's definitely worth doing. You might remember there was a big petition going around where people were objecting to Donald Trump coming to this country, and that did get the requisite number of signatures, and it was debated in Parliament, and I highly recommend going and looking it up because it's a very entertaining read, actually. What I like about this picture is I think it depicts really well the action of signing a petition. It is a tiny action, takes less than a minute, generally speaking. You might feel like you've hardly done anything, but when you put all of those together, then it starts making a change. Another action that lots of people might think of when you ask them to do something political is writing to your MP. Of course, we all have the right to tell our representatives how we feel about how things are going politically, whether you agree with them or don't agree with them. If you don't like the way things are going, tell your representatives. Maybe tell them multiple times because they don't always listen the first time. Like I say, most people would think of this kind of action for themselves. There's lots more like this in the Draw the Line project, lots for beginners, people who are just beginning to grapple with the whole idea of becoming politically active. But some of the actions are a bit more complicated or ambitious. So on the website we have included lots of extra information, so you can look up more about it, and there are links out to various resources. So like this one, this is depicting the idea of, in your community, welcoming a refugee family into your community. And I like this. This is by Karen Rubins, and the way that she's depicted the welcoming of refugees are these foreign birds coming in to meet the native species, and the native species there putting on a really nice welcome for them. So obviously, yeah, that's a really big action to take, not one that you would take lightly, but hopefully the website just gives you the seed of an idea that you can take a little bit further. And then, because we know that children can often be feeling quite scared and powerless, and especially when they're listening to their parents, parents talking about politics all the time, of course they want to do things for themselves. So there's lots of actions that kids can take on the site as well. Things like they can just wear a badge. Wearing a badge seems really simple and small, but it can spark a conversation. Things like making a joke, making your own zine, cutting down on your plastic usage, perhaps just reading books that are a bit more diverse, have diverse characters in them, or planting a garden for bees. There's lots of actions that are fun as well. So this one's by Fumio Obata. This was inspired by the area of Brighton that I live in. I don't know if anybody knows Hanover in Brighton. Yeah, it's like a sort of grid of lots and lots of terraced houses, and the streets go across and they go down as well. And what they did in Hanover was they set up a little competition. So each street was nominated a single foodstuff. So one street would have rice, and one would have baked beans, and one would have lentils. And they had a competition to see how much they could collect in a single week, street by street. And then at the end of it, they donated it all to the local food bank. Here's Jacqueline Nichols, and she actually was the only one who sewed her comic. And this is to demonstrate the idea of giving up on fast fashion. So you can either go and buy charity shop clothes, or you can sew your own. And then once we'd been through really obvious ideas, then we started researching and coming across some really quite unusual ones. So here's the idea of, this is illustrated by Hunt Emerson, the idea of hiring a billboard. So it's not widely known that you don't need to be a big brand to hire a billboard. Anyone can do it. You don't have to hire billboards up and down the country. So if you can raise a little bit of money, you can just hire a single billboard. And I don't know, you might have followed the work of Led by Donkeys prior to the election. They did this to really great effect, but it doesn't have to be political even. So I remember very gladly donating to a crowdfunder, the idea of which was that they would take down all the adverts in a tube station and replace them with pictures of kittens. And that was just really nice. Not being bombarded with ads for once, but being bombarded with kittens. And then, not all the actions require money, some of them just require time. So here's a picture or a strip by Zara Slattery, representing the idea of a community garden. So community gardens are lovely, they cut down on your carbon footprint, they provide a habitat for wildlife, give you lots of fresh fruit and vegetables, and possibly can create a bit of community as well. Then here's one of my favourites, the Raging Grannies. Has anyone heard of Raging Grannies? Okay, so what's really nice is that when I gave this talk in St Leonard's, afterwards, this lady rushed up to me and went, "I'm going to set up the St Leonard's Raging Grannies chapter." just watch me. And she did. So what are raging grannies? Raging grannies are elderly ladies who use their innocuous looks. So they might wear twin set pearls, blue rinse, and they use these looks to gain entry into places like board meetings and arms fairs. And then once they're in, they start to create havoc. So, for example, they got into an arms fair, they started dressing all the weapons in little knitted bonnets and singing them lullabies and so forth. So, yes, a very noble enterprise. Then we have shop dropping, picture by Kate Charlesworth. Now, shop dropping is the opposite of shoplifting. So with shoplifting, you might take something away from a shop. With shop dropping, you leave something behind. And in this case, you can see that what they're leaving behind are some nice little sewn-in labels to explain that your clothes may have been made in a sweatshop. Now, I must say that some of the actions depicted in Draw the Line are not strictly legal. We take very good care to note which ones may be getting you into trouble, and we don't take a stance on whether or not you should be following them. But that said, the final one I'm going to show you, this is by Kate Evans, and she wanted to depict the suffragettes, and she took inspiration from them by saying that if the law is wrong, then break it. So there you go. That is just a taste of the Draw the Line project. There's 100 more comics online for you to see and browse through, showing ideas for political actions, big ones and small ones. You can find us at drawthelinecomics.com. Oh, and I should say, if you run any kind of charity or campaign, all of those images are free. They're all under Creative Commons, which means that they can be used by anyone for any purpose, so long as it's not commercial. So long as you're not making money out of them. And what's really nice about that is that they can be used for posters, brochures, your website, or what have you. You don't even have to ask. And then finally, just to say, we would really like to make Draw the Line into a print book as well. And there are two reasons for that. First reason is that all the profits will go to the charity Help Refugees. So that's all the creative profits. It should come in at a good chunk, a good few £1,000 if we can pull it off. And then the other reason for that is that we want to get it into bookshops. So far the Draw the Line project has reached lots of people who are interested in comics and the arts and a little bit of politics perhaps, but it hasn't really permeated that bubble. And we'd love to get it into bookshops so that, you know, people who are just browsing might come across it and think, oh, pretty pictures, and through that they might learn that they themselves can become a bit more politically active. So if that's something that you're interested in, you can pledge for the book. Think of a pledge like a pre-order. So you just put your email down and you can put in a little bit of money, and then once we've reached, a bit like a Kickstarter, once it's reached the amount, then it will go to press and you'll get your copy and it will have your name in it as somebody that made it happen. If you're interested in that, then just come and see me and give me your email address afterwards. Thank you. And that's it pretty much, I think. We're on all the social media. We'd love a follow. Thank you very much for listening.